Jimmy Page gave a contentious interview with GQ a number of years ago, and I've referenced that interview several times on this channel. The interview is called Grouses of the Holy, and it's a very revealing interview, if not a smooth one. And in that interview, Jimmy Page goes to great pains to point out that he was indeed the producer of the album In Through the Outdoor, and the album does indeed reflect his vision, his ideas, and his creative control. He seemed very irritated in this interview at any intimation that he had let the production duties slide over to John Paul Jones and Robert Plant, or any other variation on that idea, and he pointed out that the production credits speak for themselves and that he stands by them. And I want you to keep that in mind as we talk about some comments that Robert Plant recently made about one of the songs on the album that he feels didn't do his lyrics justice. And the song is Carouselambra, and Robert Plant's basic issue with the final version of the song is that the mix buries the lyrics. And in Robert Plant's opinion, the lyrics of the song are among some of the most important that he ever wrote, and he is, to this day, a bit frustrated with the fact that you can't really hear the lyrics. So he says, quote, "I thought parts of Carouselambra were good, especially on the darker dirges that Pagey developed. And I rue it so much now, because the lyrics on Carouselambra were actually about that environment and that situation. The whole story of Led Zeppelin in its latter years is in that song, and I can't hear the words," end quote. So this came from an interview he gave to Mojo a few years ago, and he was saying that he didn't feel that the lyrics were given proper justice in the mix of the song. And so what I'd like to do here is examine a couple of reasons why the mix may have turned out the way that it did. First of all, I don't doubt Page's claim that he had ultimate responsibility for the production and the final mix on the entire album, and that definitely includes this song, Carouselambra. But let's look into a little bit more of the background of this song here. It was originally written during rehearsals at Clearwell Castle in 1978. And it's basically a synthesizer-driven track with Jones taking the lead and Page throwing in bits and pieces here and there. And because of this, I wanted to include some comments made by John Paul Jones about his writing process and how he goes about creating songs, because I thought it would be important. So let's listen here to John Paul Jones describe the way he goes about writing songs.
I like to get notes down. I like to get an original idea down. If you can get it down as accurately as possible, it usually is the best one. And so I'll go for a long walk and take a pad and paper and get an idea down, and then come back to the studio and try and learn it, which is sometimes more problematical, because invariably I'll write something I can't play, and so then I just have to figure it out. I mean, in the Zeppelin days, Black Dog was written like that, on a train, with a piece of paper, and a notation system that my dad showed me, where you use the values of the notes and just put little numbers underneath, like 1 to 7 for the scale, and plus and minus for flat and sharp, and just write it out, and then come back and figure it out, and then put it down on disc these days, tape in those days, and build it up, keep a library of bits and pieces, and that was good, yeah, that'll fit with that.
Alright, so what I wanted to point out in that clip, the reason that I played the whole thing is because it shows what a technical approach that he had to writing music. It's not necessarily riff-based the way a lot of rock bands would create music, although the riff-based element comes in because so much of Led Zeppelin's songs were created during band jams and rehearsals and stuff like this. But the key element in what he said there is how he would notate it in his own version of shorthand, musical shorthand, and then he would take bits and pieces from here and there and put them all together. Now, I think this is totally applicable to Carouselambra. The song is 10 minutes long. It has many different parts to it. And I mention all of this in relation to the mix, because I think that Robert Plant's lyrics got buried in the mix for a very simple reason. And that simple reason is because so much energy was devoted into putting these disparate parts together and getting a mix that would cover the instrumental sections. And then because the instrumental sections were so complicated and had so much going on, I think Page made the decision to diminish the vocals, because he thought that if he went and made a complicated vocal top to the track, the whole thing would just be overwhelming. It would just be so dense. Something had to be thinned down in order to let the track breathe, because it's one of the most highly orchestrated Led Zeppelin songs. It's also very dense, and this is without Page layering on 100 guitars. It's still a very dense and complicated track. Now, add to that the fact that Robert Plant's lyrics are also pretty wordy in terms of a Led Zeppelin song. If you go and look at something like the Rain song, the lyrics are very sparse and beautiful, and they leave a lot of room for the instrumentation to flow. Whereas with Carouselambra, the lyrics are much more complicated. The lyrics are much more meditative. There's more words. There's more difficulty of thought association, and it is a probing, searching, very deeply personal song. And I think that the reason that Robert Plant is so disappointed that the mix buried the lyrics is because if you look at the lyrics, which I pasted into the description box below for you, you can see that he was telling the story of Led Zeppelin. And that's what he said in the interview. Well, look, these lyrics were trying to tell the story of the band. So if you look at the closing lines where it says, "Take of the fruit, but guard the seed," this is the very danger that the guys in Led Zeppelin were facing at that point. They were so busy feasting on the fruits of their labor that they were in danger of eating the seeds, devouring the seeds, and destroying the very source of their creativity. So Robert Plant had reached really deep down into himself to find this lyric and to pull it out. And John Paul Jones had pushed his songwriting techniques to their fullest point, at least in regard to Led Zeppelin. At the same time, no one would argue that Page's role within the band wasn't diminished from where it had been in the past. This put Jimmy Page in the position of tackling a very sophisticated and passionate work that was largely forwarded by Robert Plant and John Paul Jones. Now, true to form, Page matched their spirit and he matched their energy, but I don't think that it was possible for him to see the track from Robert Plant's point of view. He was so busy trying to see the track from John Paul Jones's point of view and contribute to it as well as the guitarist and co-arranger and producer, that the intensity that Robert Plant was bringing to the lyrics, while no doubt he understood that when he saw the lyrics, I don't think that was a priority for Page when he was putting the track together. He was probably much more proud of the band's arrangement and instrumentation and compositional skills. So if you would like to hear the song where the lyrics aren't buried in the mix, you can find some really good covers of the song on YouTube. My favorite is called Carouselambra, live from Ye Old Absinthe House, and it features Susan Kovacs on vocals and keyboards, Lynn Osanek on guitar, Tom Gorley on bass, Alexa Berard on keyboards, and Rick Feddick on drums. And this was put up back in 2019, and it is a really, really good cover of the song where you can hear the lyric quite clearly. And the first time I heard the cover, the thing that jumped out at me was the fact that you could hear the lyrics so well and that the lyrics were so incredibly cool. And that's why when I came across this article where Robert Plant was talking about how disappointed he is in the mix, I could relate to it immediately because I had experienced hearing the lyrics for the quote first time when I listened to the cover of the song. So I suggest that you give it a try. I've got a link to that also down in the description box. So what I'd like to know from you is if you feel as though this is a missed opportunity for Led Zeppelin in their catalog. Do you feel that the mix and the production and the overall composition of the track were brought to its complete fruition here, or do you feel that there's something about Carouselambra that's not quite finished? That's always been my feeling, that it was a very promising track, but it wasn't quite full. And the feeling here that I had about that seems to relate to what Robert Plant is saying. It's that the lyric is so good that it really needs to be more upfront in the song. This is what I think, but what really matters is what you think. So if you have an idea about this or any other topic connected to classic or contemporary music, please drop it in the section below, and remember to like and subscribe. Also, if you're enjoying the videos, you can click on the thanks button right down there below the video, or you can click on the Buy Me a Coffee link and leave a donation at Buy Me a Coffee site. Finally, if you'd like to become a channel member, you can click the join button. If you join, you'll gain access to members only badges, members only polls, members only videos, and other cool perks you'll see when you click on the button. Thanks a lot.